This is a Black Women in History presentation. I'm going to be introducing our hosts. We have Cassandra West. She's a junior at Howard University, majoring in psychology and double minoring in strategic communications and sociology. She further works as a government relations intern for the One campaign. Then we have Ciarra Coston, who's a freshman currently studying astrophysics at Oxford College of Emory University. After her doctorate degree, she wants to explore space-related phenomena at NASA, JPL, or even in the commercial space, such as SpaceX, Virgin Galactic, or Blue Origins. And then we have me. I'm an 8th grade student on the high honor roll at McCarthy Middle School. I'll be attending Chelmsford High School as an honor student, pursuing my academic and extracurricular goals.
Okay, can you go back a slide, please? Thank you. Yeah, so the first person we want to talk to you about today, and welcome, is Miss Cicely Tyson. She was born in 1924 and died only a couple weeks ago in 2021. Cicely Tyson is an American actress, model, and civil rights activist. She was a trailblazer for Black women, especially dark-skinned Black women, in the movie and TV industry. She was one of the first successful Black actresses to wear her hair in an afro, and she was the first Black actress to star in TV drama East Side, West Side. Tyson received 3 Primetime Emmy Awards, 4 Black Reel Awards, 1 Screen Actors Guild Award, 1 Tony Award, an Honorary Academy Award, and a Peabody Award. In 1977, Cicely was inducted into the Black Filmmakers Hall of Fame, and in 2015, she was named a Kennedy Center honoree.
Next up, we have Dr. Valerie L. Thompson, who was born in 1943 and is now 78 years old, living in Maryland. So Dr. Thompson is an African-American scientist and inventor, best known for her patented illustration transmitter, which creates 3D projections, but are most commonly known to the public as TV and video games. But her technology also led to the creation of 3D images that doctors still use today to capture pictures of the body. She helped develop computer program designs that supported research on Halley's Comet, the ozone layer, and satellite technology. And for these achievements and more, Dr. Thomas received a number of NASA awards, including the Goddard Space Flight Center Award of Merit and the NASA Equal Opportunity Medal. And her success as a scientist, despite the lack of early support for her interests, inspired Dr. Thompson to continue to reach out to students. So in addition to her work at NASA, she mentored youth throughout the National Technological Association and science, mathematics, aerospace research, and technology.
Okay, next up, we have Marsha P. Johnson. She was born in 1945 and died in 1992. She was an activist for the LGBTQ plus rights and for civil rights. She was a Black trans woman, a self-identified drag queen, a performer, and a survivor. After transitioning, she adopted the name P as a reminder to people to pay no mind. After graduating high school in 1963, she enrolled in the Navy, and due to systemic racism, transphobia, and the depletion of resources for veterans, she ended up in New York facing a multitude of barriers to survive. Johnson quickly became a prominent figure in the LGBTQ community, serving as a drag mother, helping the homeless, and struggling LGBTQ youth. She was extremely successful and toured the world as a successful drag queen with the Hot Peaches. On June 28, 1969, at Stonewall Inn on Christopher Street, members of the LGBTQ plus community, including Marsha, were harassed by the NYPD Marcia led the group of people in defending themselves in the event that would escalate to be known as the Stonewall Riots. In the aftermath of her bravery and activism, pro-LGBTQ+ legislation began to be discussed, Pride Month was established, and the world began to reevaluate its education and biases regarding the LGBTQ community. On July 6, 1992, Marcia's body was found in the Hudson River. The police ruled her death a suicide despite a lack of evidence of the sort, and despite evidence indicating that it was a homicide. Any further statistics show that Black trans women currently and back then are 7 times more likely to be murdered than any other demographic in America.
Next, we have Jane Bolin, who was born in 1908 and passed away in 2007. Jane Bolin is the first African-American woman to graduate from Yale Law School, earning her GED in 1931. Shortly after that, she became the first African-American woman to serve as an assistant corporal counsel for New York City. And by 1939, Jane Bolin became the first African-American female judge in the United States. Using her position from the bench as a family court judge, Bolin fought against racial discrimination within the system and was a fierce advocate for children, particularly children of color whose cases she oversaw. Outside the courtroom, she served on boards and committees of a number of schools and organizations that served at-risk children, including the Child Welfare League of America. She also was a board member of the NAACP and belonged to the Urban League and other organizations that fought against racial discrimination.
So next up, we have Henrietta Lacks. She was a mother, a daughter, and a victim of the American medical system. She was raised in Halifax County, Virginia, and started her own family in Baltimore County, Maryland. In January of 1951, Lacks went to Johns Hopkins Hospital after noticing that she felt a knot in her cervix. The previous time she had sought medical care, the doctors underplayed her experience and wrote it off as pregnancy symptoms. She was then told that she had a type of cancer called epidemioid carcinoma of the cervix. Later, it was discovered that it was a misdiagnosis, but she did have a form of cancer. So during her treatment, doctors took samples of her cervix without her knowledge or permission. Researchers discovered that her cells had an unusually high reproduction rate, and that earned the nickname Immortal. They used the HeLa cell line to forge breakthroughs in biomedical research. Sadly, Henrietta died from her cancer less than a year after seeking treatment in October of 1951. Had the doctors followed ethical research standards, the money that was owed to her family from studying her cells would have sustained them for generations. Instead, they were left without a mother and stuck in extreme poverty for generations to come. She had a daughter, Elsie, who was a victim of the American medical system as well. She was epileptic, and the doctors called her insane and sent her to the hospital for the Negro Insane of Maryland. There, she was abused and had holes drilled in her head during unethical experimental treatments. She ended up dying at age 15. And these were experiences that were highly common for Black women. Current statistics show that Black women are 22% more likely to die from heart disease, 71% more likely to die from cervical cancer, and 243% more likely to die from pregnancy or childbirth-related causes than white women.
Next, we have Zora Neale Hurston, who was born in 1891 and died in 1960. She was a Harlem Renaissance writer that celebrated the culture created by Southern African Americans, usually finding her stories through folklores and other spoken stories from the South. Some of her most popular works are Their Eyes Are Watching God, Morse's Man of the Mountain, Every Tongue Got to Confess, and many, many more. She ultimately published her first novel, Jonah's Gourd Vine, in 1934. And during her lifetime, she did go on to establish the dramatic arts of Bethune-Cookman College, but sadly, most of her work was not well known until well after her death. And this was found out by a woman named Alice Walker, who actually found Hurston's unmarked grave and unearthed all of her writings. So now she's currently ranked one of the best writers of the 20th century.
Okay, so next up we have Mary Church Terrell. She was an African-American activist who championed racial equality and women's suffrages in the late 19th and early 20th century. She was one of the first African-American women to earn a master's in 1888 from Oberlin College. Her activism was sparked in 1892 when an old friend, Thomas Moss, was lynched because his business was more successful than local white businesses. Terrell joined Ida B. Wells Barnett in anti-lynching campaigns that focused on the notion of racial uplifting. She believed that Blacks would help end racial discrimination by advancing themselves and other members of the race through education, work, and community activism. Her activism actually had a strong effect on the Washington, D.C. community, as in the 1800s, it became one of the first cities to desegregate. In 1895, Terrell became one of the first African-American women appointed to a school board. Her motto was "Lifting as we climb," getting out of the stereotypes oppressed by Jim Crow, but lifting them up through activism and education. Terrell fought for women's suffrages, civil rights because she realized that she belonged to the only group in this country that has such huge obstacles, both from race and from gender.
All right, next we have Alice Coachman, who was born in 1923 and then passed away in 2014. So before even stepping foot on a college team, she broke high school and college records barefooted. So when she eventually got to the Olympics in 1948, the London Olympics, she leaped over a record-breaking height of 5 feet, 6 inches, to be one of the first Black women to win an Olympic gold medal. So, but after the Olympics in 1952, she became the first African-American woman to earn an endorsement deal as well. And continuing on, she went to go support young athletes and older retired Olympian veterans through the Alice Coachman Track and Field Foundation. And now she is currently indicted into 9 different halls of fame.
Okay, so our next woman is Audre Lorde. She was born in 1934 and died in 1992. Audre was a self-described Black lesbian, mother, warrior, and poet. She dedicated both her life and creative talents to confronting and addressing the injustices of racism, sexism, classism, and homophobia. She was one of the most prominent activists of that era to focus on the intersectionality of different forms of oppression. She was a native New Yorker and daughter of immigrants. She emphasized the need for different groups of people, particularly white women and African-American women, to find common ground on their lived experiences, but also to face the differences directly and use it as a strength rather than a source of alienation. She repeatedly emphasized the need for community in the struggle to build a better world and how to constructively channel the anger and the rage incited by oppression into a more constructive work.
All right, next up we have Zendaya, who was born in 1996. Now, Zendaya is an American actress, singer, model, dancer, and producer. And she got her first major role at the age of 14 for a Disney show called Shake It Up. She was one of the youngest women to win Best Actress in a Drama Series at the Emmys for her portrayal in the show Euphoria. She was the runner-up on the 16th season of the popular show Dancing with the Stars and held the record of the youngest dancer on the show until 2015. She had main roles in the shows including Shake It Up, Casey and the Cover, Euphoria, and even in movies including Zapped, Frenemies, and her newest movie, Malcolm and Marie.
Okay, so last but not least, we have Kamala Harris, or Vice President Kamala Harris. She was born in 1964, and she was born in Oakland, California. When she was in elementary school, she was a part of the busing program that was Berkeley, California's attempt to desegregate. She graduated from Howard University in 1986 with a double degree in political science and economics. She was a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority and an award-winning member of the Howard University speech and debate team, as well as a Capitol Hill intern. She then went on to graduate from the University of California at Hastings School of Law in 1989. As a stepmother, aunt, great aunt, sister, and daughter, she embarked on a career that involved overcoming systemic racism and misogyny. She started in California as an assistant district attorney and worked until she was elected as the district attorney of San Francisco from 2004 to 2011. She was the first person of color to hold this position. She then ran and was successfully elected as the Attorney General of California, serving from 2011 to 2017. She was the first woman, the first African American, and the first South Asian American to hold this position in California's history. In 2017, she turned her political career from practicing law to writing policy. She was elected to represent California in the US Senate and served from 2017 to 2021. Most recently, Harris was elected to serve as the 46th Vice President of the United States, becoming the first woman, the first African American, and the first South Asian American to hold that position. Just a couple of her many awards. In 2005, Harris was awarded the Thurgood Marshall Award by the National Black Prosecutors Association. In 2013, Time Magazine named her one of the 100 most influential people in the world. In 2016, the 2020 Bipartisan Justice Center awarded Harris the Bipartisan Justice Award. In 2020, she was named the Time Person of the Year along with President Joe Biden.
To finish off, we have a quote by Kimberly Bryant, which really shows what we're trying to show in this presentation. Anytime you get more than a couple Black women together, you're creating this powerful mechanism for change. If you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to speak.
I have a question for you ladies. Which one of the ladies that you've done research on was the most interesting or powerful one for you guys to learn about?
I think for me, I would have to say Kamala Harris. I go to Howard University, in case anyone does not know, and I have spent a lot of my time there learning about her. And it's kind of shown me how people can make mistakes and people can not always have the right answers, but Black women are still like so powerful and can still rise above. We can still rise above any form of oppression that anyone tries to throw at us. And it doesn't matter like whether we are that great or whether we make the right decisions all the time. We're going to, in the end, we're going to keep pushing and we're going to keep fighting for a better society.
Mm-hmm. Can I follow up on Deacon Tony's question, Cassandra, Catherine, Ciarra? Sort of a spin on that same question. Which one of those women that you researched do you see similar to you?
Okay. I'd say for me, probably Dr. Thomas, mostly because she is in the similar field that I want to be in the sense of STEM and everything, and going on from just schools in general. It's not necessarily something that students, specifically Black students, are supported in these things. So it's definitely a lot of problem solving, and even to the point where you teach yourself what you need to know. So I definitely feel like Dr. Thomas's struggles to get to where she was is kind of a similar thing that I'm going through, especially with my colleges right now.
Okay.
Hi, I have a question.
Okay.
If you could interview any one of those women, I'll say pick two, because I'm sure there's one that you all would pick. But if you could pick any two of those women to interview, which two would you select and why?
I think I would choose Zendaya and Cicely Tyson. I'd choose Zendaya because I basically grew up watching all the shows she was in, and I think she had an instrumental impact on my childhood. And I just like love to meet her and interview her and see what it was like to like grow up in the acting industry so young. And I'd also interview Cicely Tyson because she's made a lot of impactful things in the acting industry and just like as an activist. And I'd like to see and like talk to her about everything she's done because she's done a lot and I'd like to see her thoughts on everything.
Well, this is a compliment. I
Okay.
think that you three ladies pulled together a dozen or so great women from the past, from the last century and this one, and a lot of a variety of accomplishments and degrees and career choices. And I think you did a really nice job. And I like your voices. I like the way that you speak out. You're clear, precise, and weak and understandable. And that is a great compliment.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This question's open to the audience. Was there any person on here that you hadn't heard of before? Anything that you learned? Anything at all? We're hoping to get some people on here that hopefully you hadn't heard of before.
Well, I sort of knew that you would, I suspected that you would pick Kamala. I mean, not just you, Cassandra, but between you three ladies, because she's current. And I'm glad that you picked Zora Neale Hurston. And at some point, she's got a book, Their Eyes Were Watching God.
Yeah.
And that could be one of the ones that Alice Walker found after she was deceased. But it's very good. I got to see in Daytona Beach, Florida, or somewhere around that general area, there is a museum that's named after her. And I noticed that she did some work down at Bethune-Cookman, and I guess that all ties in together. And yes, they're really, I was reminded of stuff from some of these ladies. and you really made some really nice choices here. And by doing this research, you got to learn stuff yourself, in addition to teaching us and reminding us. Yeah.
Yeah, me personally, to answer that question, or at least to address your question, I don't think I've heard or I was familiar with Audre Lorde. Um, I think it's interesting some of the facts you pulled up about her. I mean, the last bullet that you had was that she encouraged her readers to constructively channel their anger and rage incited by oppression. I mean, that's interesting, and I'll be interested in hearing a little bit more about some of her works. So for me, learning or hearing a little bit more about Audre Lorde was quite Audre Lorde. I'm probably butchering the name, but that's still, the sentiment is still there. I don't think I've heard as much about her before in the past. So thank you.
Yeah, I think there were several in there. You guys had a lot of good ones. I think it was Jean Dublin. I just heard about her recently. This was I may have her last name wrong, but she was but she wasn't a Supreme Court justice. Um, what was her accomplishment? I know she was one of the first judges. I couldn't remember at what level she was as a
She
judge.
was more of like a family court judge.
hmm But she's the first African American judge in the U.S., right?
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Very powerful person, and you see that she went to one of the top universities in the country. I thought that was very interesting. Alice Coachman was another really good one, and then there was a third one. Oh, Dr. Thomas, the woman who worked for NASA. I mean, I had never heard about her, and look at all the powerful technology that she developed. I think that's incredible, and the fact that she is still with us today um, might be somebody that someone may want to look up and see if she can contact.
Mhm.
Because you may actually get a chance to talk to somebody like that. Um, so I answered the question that Cassandra asked, but I was hoping to hear, because Catherine answered a question that was asked her of who she would want to interview. I'm curious who, Ciarra, which two you would want to interview, and then Cassandra, which two you would want to interview as well.
It was for all three young ladies.
I'm trying to help you out,
Yes.
Vic.
Okay.
Okay, then I'll go. So yeah, I think as my dad was saying, I would actually very much like to talk to Dr. Thomas, just because she does like study the field and stuff that I want to. But my second person would definitely be Marsha P. Johnson, just because her being both women, being African American, and a part of the LGBTQ plus community, I think it would be very interesting to see how she was able to overcome this, especially in how oppressed all three groups are, and seeing how she was able to overcome this and continue to take those first steps, or like taking those strides into having more freedoms for the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah, and then so my first person would definitely be like Audre. I'm probably also pronouncing your name wrong, please. But it would also be Audre Lorde. I really admired, like, if anyone knows me, I'm very much of an activist. I'm very much passionate about like all forms of civil rights, whether it be for Black people, for the LGBTQ community, whether that be for like literally any community that is facing oppression. I'm around that. And one thing that I'm learning a lot at Howard is like how so many of these problems are interconnected. And she was one of the first activists to really focus on intersectionality as her platform. And she's someone who experiences discrimination as a Black woman, as a woman, as a lesbian. And she was able to kind of take all of those angles that the world was hitting her at, and form her own platform and form like her stance. And I would love to kind of interview her and figure out like how she was able to balance all of those, like all of that craziness, and how she was able to come and formulate her arguments in a way that honestly doesn't confuse her, because like when things are coming at you from all different angles, it's hard to really get a grasp of what issue to tackle first. So I definitely admire that. And then I think the next one would be Jane Bolin. I'm like, I'm in the process of applying to law school and figuring out like my path during that, down that road. And just her, I would love to interview her and figure out like what her experience was like being that trailblazer through the legal field, and like how she was able to get through law school with all these distractions. And Yale at that time was probably not the most safe space for Black people at all. So how she was able to kind of balance that and work her way through the legal fields and be so successful. I would definitely love to hear that.
You know, you young ladies are just really, really refreshing, for all, for Fitz, and I see Mama Max, anyone who's been, and Minister Gray, for we who are, retired teachers. I mean, you are the epitome of the dream, just eloquent, articulate. For me, one of my heroes, and you mentioned a couple of names together, Mary Church Terrell and Ida B. Wells. I think they were both, they actually prepared the ground for a lot of the activism that we see today. I mean, they were some bold, courageous women. Both of them, stood in the face. They both were born before slavery was ended, and lived into the early 20th century, I believe. But they that Mary Church Terrell, I think that was one of the women you had. Her association with Ida B. Wells and helping to start the NAACP, and her quote, "Lifting as we rise," that you had, just powerful Black women. But I'm really impressed by you three, super impressed.
Mary Church Terrell is actually like a name that I had not heard here at all. It wasn't until I went to DC, because she's such a huge part of DC history. She would, like, her work desegregated DC like before the 20th century hit. So she was very influential down there. Did anyone else learn anything, or like have see someone else who they hadn't really known a lot about before? Or even if they had known about them, did you learn anything else new?
Well, this is your mom. I'm just going to say I really appreciated the presentation, and just like Ron, you've touched upon one of my favorites, which is Ida B. Wells. I think she was just a phenomenal, brave woman, brave person, because the work she did going into those communities and documenting the lynchings that were done. She and her family, they were burned out of their home, and it wasn't but through the grace of God that they got out, and did not succumb to what the forces were trying to do. The bravery that she showed to still remain active, I think about that, think about whether that's something, I could do personally, but I think it is just but with the grace of God. And I like to point her out in particular because this past year, she has finally really started to get the kudos that she so rightly deserves, and recognition on not just the national level, but the international level as well. So great job including Miss Ida B. Wells, because she was phenomenal.
Is there any people that we should look up? any figures, any Black women that we hadn't covered that you think that we should do some research into?
What about the women, and they're more contemporary to the three of you, but the women who led and founded the Black Lives Matter work and movement?
Okay.
And I can't remember all of their names, but I think what they're doing, really has set the stage for what's going on today.
I would also add Cassandra, and I'll definitely look up the name, but the Me Too movement was actually started by a Black woman as well. It didn't become well known until the white women started using it, but the Me Too movement was actually started by a Black woman.
Right.
I would also look up Billie Holiday.
Okay.
Billie Holiday is, she was a multifaceted person who we are just now, a lot of what she was about is just coming to light. When people talk about her, they talk about her in reference to drug addiction and the IRS, but she was very, how shall I say, very much into the plight and suffering of the LBGT community and African Americans in general. Lee Daniels has a movie that's coming out that should show some other dimensions of her, but it might be good to take a look at her too.
Okay, so at the next part of this program, we're going to kind of test how much we learned today. We're going to do a little Kahoot game. And our amazing brother is helping out with that.
I'm going to show you guys how to get to Kahoot. You go to kahoot.it in a web browser. And then a game pin's going to pop up on your screen and you're going to put it in.
Yeah, when you guys do play Kahoot, know that you will be, it's basically just online trivia. So you'll see the questions through Zoom, but you have to answer on what Michael is showing you on the website .kahoot.it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, so you can do
either,
it on your computer, but it works best if you do it on your phone.
Yes.
Okay, so the game pin is 8067489. You entered that and you get to choose what nickname you want.
We're gonna start the game, but you still can join along the way if you want to.
The first question is, who was the first African-American woman to graduate with a JD from Yale Law School?
Five more seconds.
All right, Uncle Tony in the lead.
Just like to point out that if you still want to join, the code is in the bottom right for you to.
So our next question is, who has honorary degrees from Clark Atlanta, Howard University, Morehouse College, and Columbia University? All right, good job. Deacon Walker took the lead.
Be on your background. I'm be on you.
All right, the next question is, who established a school of dramatic arts at Bethune-Cookman College? Good job.
All right, next up we have, who is the activist that led the Stonewall riots and eventually Pride Month?
Make sure you tell them that speed counts, ladies.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So the quicker you answer it, the more points you get, even if you get it right.
See, that's why it's unfair. How many times you been playing Tony Costa?
You got to blame it on Francine's family because they play cahoots all the time.
Who is the youngest woman to win Best Actress in a Drama Series at the Emmys? Okay, there we go.
Okay,
Everybody got that
10 for
one.
10. All right.
So who was the Black woman to win an Olympic gold medal?
That's most people.
You want the next one, Cassandra?
Yeah. Okay, so who was the activist that emphasized the need for different groups to find common ground or intersectionality?
Almost everybody.
That's pretty good. Okay, Uncle Tony in the lead, Aunt Franny's next, the mom behind. Okay.
All right. Who is the scientist that helped develop programs to research Halley's Comet, the ozone layer, and satellite technology?
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Still in the lead.
Okay, whose daughter, Elsie, suffered and died from unethical medical research? Henrietta Lacks. Good job.
Okay.
Oh, Deacon Walker's taking over my mom.
Okay, who played a prominent role in anti-lynching campaigns and the desegregation of Washington, D.C.? Ooh, not as much.
This is tight.
Mhm. Except like you're in 2000, right?
Who was the first person of color to become the district attorney of San Francisco?
That was quick.
I know that's right. I know that's right.
Okay, last question. Multiple
What's up,
select.
bonus?
So who has degrees from the Howard University?
A little slower this time.
Okay. All right. Let's see.
Not all of you guessed. Not all of you guessed. I'm so disappointed. Mm.
Second. Okay, who's first? I'm pretty sure I know who it is. Yep.
Hey,
Hey,
congratulations.
stop the steal, Tony. Stop the steal.
You guys
Congratulations.
couldn't hear Francine. She's in the other room, and I could tell when she got it right and when she got it wrong because I could hear her yelling.
I can hear her from upstairs as well.
Well, just so you know, we are not knocking on Dr. Valerie Thomas, by the way. She did go to Morgan State, which is another HBCU, but it's obviously not the Howard University. So, well, thank you all. I really enjoyed presenting to you guys, and I hope that this was as impactful as it was meant to be.
I think you ladies did a great job. Thank you so much for putting this together. We had fun and learned a lot. So I'm appreciative of your efforts. Thank you. This was
Yep,
great.
and I want to echo that. I think all three of you did an amazing job tonight. I like the dialogue. I like the conversation, how you pulled people in. Each one of you, in my mind, you model many of the characteristics and attributes of the women you presented. So, I think you can see a reflection of yourselves in each one of those, of them in each one of you. And I also want to thank Michael Scott West for handling the technology tonight. And I want to thank everybody for being able to come out and join. This has been excellent. This is the third part of our Black History Month series. And it's been a fabulous month. And we hope to continue to do more activities with the community as we go forward. So again, ladies, thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Awesome job.
Thank
And
you.
Mike,
Thank
hey,
you.
great job, great job. And
You
Mike
did a
West,
great
can we have a
job.
Cahoots marathon?